Swedish ferry Marco Polo runs aground. On Sunday, October 22, at 7 a.m., the TT Line passenger ferry Marco Polo ran aground south of Karlshamn, in Pukaviksbukten, Sweden. The 75 passengers and crew were not injured, but oil and diesel fuel leaked into the sea. The Sea Rescue Society evacuated passengers and erected a barrier around the ship in cooperation with the Swedish Coast Guard to prevent the spread of oil and diesel fuel in the immediate area. The ship currently remains stable on the ground, but there is a risk that the vessel's stability may be affected by increasing winds. It turned out that the ferry ran aground early on the morning of October 22 and leaked oil for several nautical miles before it hit the foundations of the seabed, where it became stuck. The head of the preliminary investigation, Jonathan Orn of the Swedish Coast Guard, said on Sunday. At the scene, there are investigators present who are investigating the circumstances of the incident. Shipping company TT Line contracted with Smit Salvage to salvage the ferry. On Tuesday evening, 2 tugboats arrived at the crash site. TT Line said the most important current priority is to stabilize the ship to prevent further damage. The second priority is to illuminate the ship from the remaining bunker on board as soon as weather conditions permit. Therefore, on Thursday and Friday there was the arrival of 2 specialized shallow draft lighters. This step is of paramount importance to reduce the risk to the environment and further facilitate the restoration of the vessel. Dives will also be conducted to examine the ship's hull below the surface. The information collected is necessary to save the ship. The shipping company will submit a rescue plan to the Swedish Coast Guard, which must be approved before the rescue can begin. The Coast Guard is ready to assist in an emergency, with the KBV constantly on site to respond. The oil spill drifted toward a sensitive half-mile stretch of coastline in Pukavik Bay between Lorby-Clad and Horvik in the municipality of Salzborg, Blekinge. The Coast Guard mobilized personnel and units from across southern Sweden to combat the spill, in cooperation, among others, with the Swedish Sea Rescue Society and local emergency services. On Monday, weather conditions were favorable for removing oil from the sea surface. The weather worsened on Tuesday, making offshore oil production difficult. In addition, over time, the oil began to sink below the surface and turned into a thick emulsion. By Tuesday evening, almost all of the oil had gone below the surface, meaning that getting out to sea by ship was no longer possible. Late Tuesday, the Coast Guard said almost 11,000 liters of oil had been found so far. Flights over the area on Wednesday showed a 3-kilometer stretch of coastline in Blekinge covered in oil, from Krokus in the south to Lorby-Clada in the north, as well as a swath of oil at Norge. The Swedish Coast Guard is now working close to shore to recover the oil, side by side with local emergency services who are responsible for oil that ends up on shore. Coast Guard units on site will be ready if oil resurfaces further out to sea and can be collected there. At the moment, more than 4 kilometers of booms have been installed. In total, about 75 Coast Guard personnel, an environmental rescue vessel, and an observation vessel are on site. Several small workboats for transporting personnel. Airplanes and drones are used in the air. Rescue divers for light and heavy dives in contaminated water. Coast Guard aircraft frequently patrol the area. At the same time, the Coast Guard is investigating the causes of the grounding and spill. Since Sunday, investigative measures have been carried out. Interrogations on board, collection of information and technical documentation. Further interviews were conducted on board the Marco Polo throughout the day. The information obtained will be made public when the investigation allows it. A check on board showed that everyone was sober. On October 25, the investigation yielded its first result. 2 members of the Marco Polo crew were charged with negligence in maritime transport. A Coast Guard criminal investigation found there was probable cause to suspect criminal charges against 2 crew members who acted negligently in connection with the 2 groundings. The ship gradually deviated from its usual course to the west and it ran aground. Ice data shows the vessel passed a marked shoal just off its port side and suddenly slowed from 17 knots to 11 knots before picking up speed again. According to Swedish investigators, it may also have touched bottom before its final grounding site, with enough force to damage the hull.